This is section 8.2, the quadratic formula, page 496, 2 to 22 even, and I'm going to do 1 through 21 odd. So here we go. We have m squared plus 5m minus 6 equals 0. Now we're using the quadratic formula to solve these. So remember, your quadratic formula says negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? So the first thing you need to do is make sure it's in the right form. Okay? M squared plus 5m minus 6 equals 0 is the correct form. So I'm going to go ahead and list out what a, b, and c are. A is always your coefficient with x squared. So in this case it's 1. B is always your coefficient with x, so in this case it's 5, and c is your constant, in this case it's negative 6. Always make sure that you keep your signs with it. Alright, so negative b is 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 6, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Alright, so we're going to do Pemdas here. I'm going to leave negative 5 alone, plus or minus the square root. 5 squared is 25. And then you're going to say, you can do this one of two ways. You can say 4 times 1 times negative 6 and then do minus that. Or you can say negative 4 times 1 times negative 6. I do negative 4 times 1 times negative 6. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times negative 6 is positive 24. So then I'll say plus 24. All over 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay, so we have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 all over 2. Oops. There we go. So we know the square root of 49 is 7. So I'm going to say negative 5 plus or minus 7 all over 2. And now you can go ahead and break this into two problems. Negative 5 plus 7 over 2 and negative 5 minus 7 over 2. Negative 5 plus 7 is 2. So you have 2 over 2, which is just 1. And then negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12 over 2, which is negative 6. So my answers are x equals negative 6 and 1. Or if you want to write it in a set, it would be like that. Negative 6 and 1. Alright, number 3 says 2y equals 5y squared minus 3. In order to be able to do the quadratic formula, we have to put this in standard form. So, which basically means we need to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2y from both sides, which is going to leave me 0 equals 5y squared minus 2y minus 3. Now, if you want to rewrite this, 5y squared minus 2y minus 3 equals 0, if that makes you more comfortable, you can go right ahead and do that. Now off to the side here, I'm going to write a, b, and c. A is my coefficient with your squared variable. B is your coefficient with your variable. And c is your constant. Make sure you are taking your signs with your number. So this is negative 2 and this is negative 3. Be very careful there. Now we're going to plug into the quadratic formula, which again, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'm going to say x equals negative b is negative 2, so it's negative negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so it's negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is negative 3. And this is all over 2a, and in this case, a is 5. All right, let's go ahead and clean this up some. Minus a negative is a plus, so it's just going to be 2, plus or minus the square root. Negative 2 squared is 4, and then I do negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. Negative 20 times negative 3 is positive 60. So it's plus 60. All over 2 times 5 is 10. So now I'm going to say x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 10. X equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 64 is 8 over 10. So now at this point I can break it up into two problems. 2 plus 8 over 10, and then 2 minus 8 over 10. 2 plus 8 is 10, so this is 10 over 10, which is 1. And then over here, 2 minus 8 is negative 6 over 10, which is the same as negative 3/5. So my answer is going to be negative 3/5 and 1. Okay, next I have x squared minus 6x plus 9. This is already in standard form, so I can go ahead and say a is 1, b is negative 6, and c is 9. And then I'm going to go ahead and start plugging into the quadratic formula. So I have negative b, so negative negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 9. All over 2a, and in this case a is 1. X equals, minus a negative is the same as positive, so it's just positive 6, plus or minus the square root, negative 6 squared is 36, and then you take negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 9 is negative 36. All over 2. X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36 is 0. All over 2. The square root of 0 is just 0. So you have 6 plus or minus 0 over 2. So I can break this up into two problems. 6 plus 0 over 2 and 6 minus 0 over 2. Hopefully you see that that's the same thing, but if not, no worries, we can still work it out. 6 plus 0 is 6 over 2, which is 3. And then over here, 6 minus 0 is 6 over 2, which is 3. So that means my solution set is just the number 3. Okay, I have x squared plus 7x plus 4 is equal to 0. It is in standard form, so I can go ahead and start listing out my a, b, and c. A in this case is 1, b is 7, and c is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in. X is equal to negative b, so negative 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 7 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4, all over 2a, and in this case a is 1. Alright, let's clean it up. Negative 7 plus or minus the square root, 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. So we'll say minus 16. All over 2 times 1 is just 2. So I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root. 49 minus 16 is what? 33? Seems right. All over 2. All right, this is our first example where it's not a perfect square, which is totally fine. So you're just going to, we cannot simplify the square root of 33. So you're just going to break this up into two answers. Negative 7 plus the square root of 33 over 2. And negative 7 minus the square root of 33 over 2. and that's your solution set. And that's as far as you can go, because we don't want to simplify the square root of 33 into a decimal or anything like that. Number 9, 8m squared minus 2m equals 7. In order to put this in standard form, I'm going to have to subtract 7 from both sides, giving me 8m squared minus 2m minus 7 is equal to 0. Okay? So now I've got A, B, and C. A is 8, B is negative 2, and C is negative 7. Let's go ahead and plug in. X is equal to negative B, so negative 2 plus or minus the square root of B squared, so negative 2 squared, minus 4AC. A is 8, C is negative 7, all over 2A, and in this case, A is 8. Minus a negative is a plus, so that's just going to become positive 2. Plus or minus the square root, negative 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 8 is negative 32, times negative 7 is, I have no idea, let me get a calculator. All right, negative 32 times negative 7 is positive 224. Oops. Positive 224. All over 2 times 8 is 16. Okay. So then we have x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 224 plus 4, which is 228, all over 16. All right, so now we need to figure out if the square root of 228 can be simplified at all. So over to the side over here, I'm going to do the square root of 228. And let's break it down. All right, 228. We know it's divisible by 2, but I would prefer to use a larger number than that. All right, so let's do 57 times 4. Is 228. 4 is 2 times 2. And 57 is actually prime, so we can't go any further. So that means a 2 can come out front, leaving the 57 in the inside. So we're going to change square root of 228 to 2 square root of 57. So I've got 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 57 over 16. Now let me explain to you why this is so handy that this happened. I know a bunch of you are probably thinking, oh, I can reduce the 2 and the 16 and the 2 and the 16. You can, however, in order to be able to do so, you have to factor a 2 out of the top. This term has a 2, and this term has a 2 on the outside of the radical, so you can factor out a 2. So it's x equals, I'm going to factor out a 2, leaving me, if I factor out a 2, that leaves me with 1 plus or minus the square root of 57 all over 16. Now that that 2 is factored out, I can reduce it with this 16. You cannot do so until then. 2 over 16 reduces to 1 over 8. So you end up with x equals, if you go ahead and distribute this 1, nothing changes, 1 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 8. So your two answers are 1 minus the square root of 57 over 8 and 1 plus the square root of 57 over 8. Okay? All right, number 11. 3m minus 7m equals 3. First things first, I need to go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides. So you have 3m squared minus 7m minus 3 is equal to 0. I'm bored with this color. Let's switch to blue. Ooh, pretty. Blue's my favorite color. All right, so 3m squared minus 7m minus 3 equals 0. I can go ahead and list out what a, b, and c is. A is 3, B is -7, and C is -3. Don't forget to take your signs with it. X equals -b, so it's -7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is -7 squared, minus 4ac. A is 3, C is -3. All over 2a, and in this case A is 3. X equals, add a line, change a sign. 7 plus or minus the square root, -7 squared is 49. Here we go, -4 times 3 is -12. -12 times -3 is +36. All over 6. Okay? So then we have x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 85 all over 6. Okay? So let's check and see if we can do anything with the square root of 85. So 85 is 17 times 5. We can't do anything with that, so I guess square root of 85 is as simple as it gets. So our answer is 7 minus the square root of 85 over 6, and 7 plus the square root of 85 over 6. That was fun. I liked using the blue one. Okay, 13 says 1/2 x squared minus x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, number 13 has a fraction involved. So we could very easily say, oh, A, B, C, A is 1/2, B is -1, C is -1. But that's going to suck when you go to plug it back in. Honestly, that 1/2, you're not going to want to deal with it. So my advice, if you have a fraction, is go ahead and multiply by the LCD. So in this case, you're going to multiply the whole thing by 2. So remember, when I do that, I put a 2 here, a 2 here, a 2 here, and a 2 here. So you end up, this 2 and this 2 cancel, leaving you 1x squared minus 2 times x is minus 2x minus 2 times 2 times 1 is 2 equals 0 times 2 is just 0. This problem that we just created here by using our LCD is equivalent to the problem that they gave us. However, I would much rather plug in 1, -2, and -2 than 1/2 any day. So now I can go ahead and say A is 1, B is -2, and C is -2. And those numbers will be a lot easier for me to plug in. X equals -b, so -2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, -2 squared, minus 4ac, A is 1, C is -2, all over 2a, and A is 1 in this case. Negative is a positive, so that's just +2, plus or minus the square root. 2 squared is 4. Here we have -4 times 1 times -2. -4 times 1 is -4, times -2 is +8. All over 2 times 1 is 2. Then you have x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 12 all over 2. Okay. Let's go ahead and take the square root of 12 over here and simplify. 12 is 4 times 3, and 4 is 2 times 2. So I can bring a 2 out in front. It becomes 2 square root of 3. So I'm going to change the square root of 12 to 2 square root of 3. Now, 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 can cancel. However, you have to factor a 2 out of the numerator. So x equals, if I factor a 2 out, I'm left with 1 plus or minus the square root of 3 all over 2. Now that this 2 is out in front, I can go ahead and cancel it with this 2. So they just cancel each other, which is nice. Leaving me x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 3. So your answers are 1 minus the square root of 3, 1 plus the square root of 3. Okay. Ooh, fun. 2/5 y squared plus 1/5 y equals 3/5. Okay. First, let's go ahead and subtract 3/5 from both sides. Well, actually, I changed my mind. Let's go ahead and get rid of the fractions first. Doesn't really make a difference either way, but I think this will be prettier if we do it this way. All right, I need to find my LCD, lowest common denominator, or least common denominator. In this case, it's 5. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 5 times the whole thing. So I put a 5 here, a 5 here, and a 5 here. This 5 and this 5 cancel, leaving me 2y squared. This 5 and this 5 cancel, leaving me plus 1y equals, and this 5 and this 5 cancel, leaving me equals 3. So now let's go ahead and move the 3. Subtract 3 from both sides. You get 2y squared plus y minus 3 equals 0. Now I can go ahead and name A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 1, and C is negative 3. Negative B, so negative 1, plus or minus the square root of B squared, so 1 squared, minus 4AC, A is 2, B is negative 3, all over 2A, and in this case, A is 2. So it's 2 times 2. So then we have x equals negative 1 plus or minus the square root. 1 squared is 1. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus 1 plus 24 is 25, so I have the square root of 25 all over 4. We know the square root of 25 is 5, so I have x equals negative 1 plus or minus 5 over 4. So I've got x equals negative 1 plus 5 over 4, and I have x equals negative 1 minus 5 over 4. Negative 1 plus 5 is 4 over 4, which is 1. And then negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 over 4, which is negative 3 halves. So my solution set is negative 3 halves and 1. It's nice when you get actual numbers like that. All right, 17. 1/3 y squared equals y plus 1/6. So just like the last problem, I think that worked out nicely. Let's go ahead and multiply the whole thing by the LCD first. In this case, I need a least common denominator of 3. I can go ahead and put my y over 1. 1 and 6. So it's going to be 6. So I'm going to multiply a 6 here, a 6 here, and a 6 here. This 6 divided by 3 is equal to 2. 6 divided by 1 is just 6, so we'll leave that alone. And then 6 divided by 6, these will actually cancel each other out. So we're left with all 1s in the denominator, which was the plan. Now we just multiply what we have left. So I have 2 times 1 times y squared is 2y squared equals 6 times y, 6y, plus, all I have left here is the 1, so it's plus 1. Now that I have all whole numbers, I need to go ahead and put it all set equal to 0 so I can go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to subtract 6y from both sides. So I have 2y squared minus 6y equals 1. Then subtract 1 from both sides, leaving me 2y squared minus 6y minus 1 is equal to 0. Now that I have all of that, I would much rather plug those numbers in than the fractions they gave me in the beginning. So A is going to be 2, B is going to be negative 6, and C is going to be negative 1. So I'm going to say x equals negative b, so it's negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4ac AC, so times 2 times negative 1, all over 2A, which in this case is 2 times 2. Okay, x equals, add a line, change the sign, positive 6 plus or minus the square root, negative 6 squared is 36, and then I say negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8, all over 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. So x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 44 over 4. Okay, let's go ahead and bring square root of 44 over to the side and see if I can simplify it. 44 is 4 times 11, and 4 is 2 times 2. So I can bring a 2 out front and leave a square root of 11. So I have x equals 6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 11 over 4. Now this is another situation where 6 and 4 and 2 and 4 are all even, so you know I can reduce in some sense. But in order to do that, I have to factor out of the numerator. So I'm going to factor out a 2, because that's what the numerator has in common. Leaving behind 3 plus or minus the square root of 11 all over 4. Now that the 2 is outside, I can reduce it with the 4. 2 over 4 is going to reduce to 1 over 2. So I'm going to have x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 11 all over 2. So that's 3 minus the square root of 11 over 2, and 3 plus the square root of 11 over 2. And that is your answer. Okay, number 19 says, x squared plus 5x equals negative 2. In order to be able to use the quadratic formula, I have to be in standard form. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides, which gives me x squared plus 5x plus 2 is equal to 0. A is 1, B is 5, and C is 2. All positive numbers this time. So I'm going to plug into the quadratic formula, which says x equals negative b, which is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4a, which is 1, c, which is 2, all over 2a, which is 2 times 1. X equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root, 5 squared is 25. Then you're going to say negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 2 is negative 8. So minus 8 all over 2. All right, so x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root. 25 minus 8 is 17 over 2. 17 cannot be simplified, so your answers are negative 5 minus the square root of 17 over 2, and negative 5 plus the square root of 17 over 2. All right, and the last one says m plus 2 times 2m minus 6 equals 5 times m minus 1 minus 12. So before we can do any of this, we're going to have to go ahead and do some multiplication and some regular algebra to go ahead and get this in standard form so that we can use the quadratic formula. So on the left side, you're going to distribute the m to both pieces and then the 2 to both pieces of the second binomial. So m times 2m is 2m squared. Then m times negative 6 is negative 6m. Now we're going to distribute the 2. 2 times 2m is positive 4m. And then 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. On the right side, I'm going to distribute the 5, giving me 5m minus 5 minus 12. Now let's go ahead and clean up anything we can. Negative 6m and 4m are like terms, so I can combine them. Negative 6m plus 4m is negative 2m minus 12. equals 5m, and then negative 5 minus 12 are both like terms, so that's minus 17. Now I need to set the whole thing equal to 0 in order to be able to use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to subtract 5m from both sides, leaving me 2m squared minus 7m minus 12 is equal to negative 17. Add 17 to both sides, and you get 2m squared minus 7m equals 5 equals, I don't know what I was thinking there, plus 5 is equal to 0. Now that I'm set equal to 0, I can give A, B, and C numbers. A is 2, B is negative 7, and C is 5. All right, let's go ahead and plug into the quadratic formula then. I've got x equals negative b, so negative negative 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 7 squared, minus 4ac. A is 2, C is positive 5, so ignore that little spot right there. Didn't want anybody to get confused. Okay, all over 2a, and a in this case is 2, so it's 2 times 2. X equals, add a line, change the sign, 7 plus or minus the square root, negative 7 squared is 49. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. All over 2 times 2 is 4. So I have x equals 7 plus or minus the square root. 49 minus 40 is 9 over 4. The square root of 9 is 3. Now we can go ahead and split this up. X equals 7 plus 3 over 4, and x equals 7 minus 3 over 4. I'm going to go ahead and shoot this up here. Forgive me. 7 plus 3 is 10, so I have x equals 10 over 4, which will reduce to 5 over 2. And then I've got x equals 7 minus 3 is 4 over 4, which is 1. So your solution set is 1 and 5 halves. Those are your two answers. Let me make sure I'm right. I am. No shock there. So go ahead and look back through the video, find what number I changed the color pen to. Tell me what number it was and what color it is. It's my favorite number and my favorite color. If you tell me those things quietly where no one else can hear you, I will give you 3 extra credit points on the next test. Have a great day.